Madison, Wisconsin, where the Badgers are looking to get back on track after seeing their 22-year bowl streak come to an end in a very uncharacteristic down season. Year 3 of the Luke Fickell era brings a new offensive philosophy with a highly decorated coordinator looking to re-emphasize the ground game that has made the Badgers so formidable through the years. That plus a talented transfer class has Wisconsin fans hoping they can overcome a brutal schedule and return to postseason contention. We'll take a deep dive on the 2025 Badgers on our Wisconsin football training camp special now. The dawn of a new season in Madison. The Badgers 5-7 a year ago after losing their final 5 games, hoping a new approach and a fresh start will help get Camp Rando rocking again in 2025. Welcome in, Dave Revsine alongside Gerry, DiNardo, and Jake Butt. Guys, no way to sugarcoat it. What happened here last year was not up to the standards that this program has set over the past few decades. And now the question is, how do they get it back on track? What are you watching for here today?
Well, I think a lot of people think it's just simply changing offensive coordinators, right? Jeff Grimes is now the new offensive coordinator. It goes much deeper than that. Luke Fickell says he wants to change, if we want to use the word culture of the program, they want to be more physical, more dominant. It's not about run-pass ratio on offense. They were pretty balanced last year. It's for the offensive line, it's not just zone blocking, it's gap blocking, it's some of the things. The complicating thing about this, Jake, is they're doing it without the Big Ten West. They're doing it against perhaps one of the most difficult schedules in the conference and in the country. So this is a major transition going into a third year that's really unusual.
Yeah, to build off what you said there, Coach, I felt like watching their offense since Fickell got here, they've lacked an identity. They were kind of an offense that was in between. Did they want to be air raid or did they want to run the ball? And I think that's why they bring in Coach Grimes, which Fickell has emphasized. You're not going to see Wisconsin of 5 years ago where it's goal line formation from their own 20. It's going to be a modernized version of running the ball, and I think that will suddenly start to unlock another number of things. On the defensive side of the ball, when I think of great Wisconsin defense, it starts with the defensive front, being disruptive, forcing tackles for losses and sacks. That's been a big emphasis this offseason, so I'm looking to see the changes up front.
You know, 2 things, Jake, come to mind. We stood right over there last year after practice, and Coach told us the offensive line wants to do more. They don't want to just be a zone blocking, and sure enough, they didn't do that, and now they're doing it. You mentioned the defense. Coach Fickell will tell you, this change is good for our defense as well. It's going to make our defensive better instead of going against the air raid in spring practice and in preseason.
I know there's been a lot of focus on the offensive struggles, and we'll certainly get into those coming up here in the next hour. But the defense has fallen off as well. It has not been at the level that it's been at historically. So that's the story here in terms of what needs to improve for Wisconsin. What are you watching in terms of seeing how it manifests itself today?
I mean, it's little subtle things like Coach Tressel has talked about having how the defensive line lines up. It's the 2-4-5 system, so they'd have both their edges standing up. That doesn't create a physical brand of football, so he wants to see the defensive line in an attacking stance with their hands in the ground, a 3-point stance, more pressure, more disruption up front. So I'm excited to see the team inside run drills, a brand of physicality.
Yeah, inside run drills, I think, is the answer. I want to see both lines and see if they're more physical than they were a year ago. That's the issue. It's not how many runs and how many passes, what defense. It's what we look like at the line of scrimmage historically, but evolving away from the I formation and not playing in the Big Ten West.
This a team that really did struggle both sides of the ball last year. The offense, I think, is where most of the people focused, and understandably so. 5 games last year, scoring 14 or fewer points. Only Purdue had more in the Big Ten. The Badgers' struggles the last couple of years due in part to injury issues at quarterback. They overhauled that room this season with Billy Edwards slated to be the starter. The Maryland transfer was second in the Big Ten in passing yards per game last year, was solidly in the middle of the conference, 9th in pass efficiency. Has some talent around him, including leading returning receiver Vinny Anthony. That duo with Jake.
All right, Billy, I want to go back to when you decided to join the Badgers and put your trust in Coach Fickell and Coach Grimes. What went into that decision?
Yeah, really just a lot of conversations with those two. I think on my visit here, I spent probably 5-6 hours watching film with Coach Grimes, asking him what his vision was for this place, where did I fit into that vision? What, kind of piece of the puzzle was I? And then really with Coach Fick, just the leadership aspect, trying to get outside my comfort zone, step into a new locker room, a new team, new place, and really be forced into that leadership role and to take it on. And, they embraced me and all that. And I've really tried to embrace Madison and, only being here for a year. So really just those two things, I think, were the biggest two things on my, I was here for probably 2.5 days on my official visit, and I had a lot of really good conversations that made me feel really good. And then, even since I've been here in January, everything's kind of exceeded my expectations.
When you were watching film with Coach Grimes, what were some of those things that stood out that got you excited?
Yeah, really just what he was asking of a quarterback, right? I played in, the Big Ten for 3 of my 4 seasons I played thus far in college football. This will be my 4th. I felt like I played an offense that, we were a little bit more RPO heavy, drop back pass, throw the ball, which is fun. It's great as a quarterback. But obviously in this league, it starts up front. You're going to have to be able to run the ball. You're going to have to be able to be pretty multiple in some ways. So really just what he was asking of the quarterback position, I felt like, for my last year of eligibility, God willing, whatever opportunity I get at the next level, that playing in a system like this where, the final call goes through me. I get the final call of what play we want to be in and out of, the worst looks I can get us out of it. I have everything, all the tools at my, disposal. I wanted to do that, before, whatever opportunity I get. I felt like I was, good enough. I feel like I prepare well enough. I have the, the IQ to be able to do all that. Now it's just, about getting the opportunity to do it. And, I'm really, really happy I picked, Wisconsin and had the opportunity to play under a guy like Coach Grimes.
Vinny, how about for you? What's different from a receiver standpoint about this offense?
I feel like it's the way we attack each day, really. And I feel like our culture is just different on offense compared to like in the past. I mean, just the way we run the ball and attack people vertically is just different. And I think it's a good different to me. I mean, I enjoy this offense. It keeps me on my toes, and I enjoy it every day.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's a bunch of buzz about the improved run game. How might that play into helping you out as a wide receiver?
I mean, obviously, if we're all as a receiver, I mean, I enjoy blocking too. I mean, that's what we've come to enjoy in this offense, honestly. I mean, each day, I mean, we know we're going to block. We're not going to just run routes all day. So, I mean, when we have a good backfield like we do, I mean, it just opens up our opportunities, leaves one-on-ones on the outside and lets us take the top off or give a quick sweep and then we're to the house, you know what I'm saying? So.
Yeah. You dig out of safety, then it's play action over the top for
exactly,
a touchdown.
Everyone fake block and then, he thought it was a run, it's a pass. Yeah. So.
How about the big boys up front in the trenches? What's your assessment of that group so far?
Yeah, I mean, really just their mindset. I think, first of all, I think Coach Blas has done an unbelievable job from top to bottom with that room. You look at, some of the even early enrollees, the freshmen that have come in the last 2 months, like they really all take on the mindset and the personality of him and what he wants, the Wisconsin Badgers offensive line room to look like. And then, you got some of the older guys, Jake Renfro, Riley Mallman, Joe Brunner, some more of the vocal guys, bringing in some new pieces this summer. Really just their mindset. Like Vinny said, we're trying to be more attacking, more physical, kind of not maybe why we do things or what we're doing, but how we do it. How are we approaching it? What's our mindset? What's our attitude? And, it really starts with those guys up front. And, I look and I feed off a lot of my energy with them. I'm always telling Joe Brunner, he's always a vocal guy and a guy that, has, zero shame in getting people hype or ripping into somebody. And so it's a good room. It's a good balanced room. But that's the one thing I'd say about all of them, just being really, top to bottom, they all kind of take on that mindset and you can see the growth from, Hardy Watts, who got here, I think 7 months ago when I came in, to, Jake Renfro, who's probably 25 years old right now, I don't know. But from top to bottom of the room, you can really see the growth and development, and everyone kind of takes on that mindset and embraces it.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to watching you guys this fall. Thanks for the time.
Thank you.
So much more to come on the show. We'll take a look at the other side of the ball. Visit with DC Mike Tressel, plus Gerry and Jake on what they saw today. And we'll visit with the Badgers head coach, Luke Fickell, about his overhauled offense and how to navigate a challenging slate. Our Badger Camp Tour special on the Big Ten Network.
Come on!
It's not a great year for Wisconsin defensively a season ago, giving up more than 23 points per game, their most in 16 years. Had their fewest takeaways in a full season in 25 years, forcing just a dozen turnovers. All that said, they do bring back a lot of production from that team. Only Illinois returns more in the Big Ten. Here's DC Mike Tressel with Gerry.
Coach Fickell has talked so much about the offense and the changes that they're making, but he also always mentions that it's going to help our defense. Explain that to me.
Well, first of all, our offense being more physical, more pounded, just adds to the mentality of the whole team. Right? And obviously, you already talked about the 5 games we've won the rushing battle. We won those games. So when they're able to control the line of scrimmage, keep us off the field a little bit more, allow us to A, get fresh, B, make adjustments, that's complimentary football.
When you talk about being physical, talk about the guys up front that are having really good camps, because it looks like you've got a bunch of them.
Yeah, you know what? Strength in numbers is huge. Okay, I truly believe we have more than a 2-deep that can go out and play on normal down and distances on a regular basis. The size up front is significantly different. Ben Barton, Suggs in the middle, but then you have Brandon Lane, Perk. I mean, we have just a number of guys that we might not have to go more than 2 snaps in a row in the inside. Right? I think our edges are very, very talented, a lot of new guys, but there's also significantly more size. So we can have true pass rush specialists, and we can have some big boys in there that, they can rush the passer, but it might be a little bit more speed to power. But that's what we're building ourselves for. I think that's the history of Wisconsin football. That's how we've been able to win games, and that's what we're focusing on.
You're almost the opposite of the offense. You're the same coordinator going into 3rd year. How or what are things you want to do in the 3rd year maybe that you hadn't done the first 2 years?
I think our guys were a little too concerned about being perfect and playing what I call fit ball. Little too overly worried about assignment and gaps. This year we've made our primary objective TFLs and takeaways while limiting explosives, and the mentality I think is completely different. There is much more attack, quite honestly, than hanging on for dear life. And that mentality change has been huge, and then execution in the clutch. And that's it, those 2 things.
Right. It's become a year-round sport. You're allowed to coach the guys all year. When it comes to tackling, how much live tackling will you do in camp?
Not a ton of live tackling, but I think if you flip on just today's practice, our thud is very, very, very close to live. I mean, our offense is designed to force the corners to tackle, and we have corners knocking tailbacks backwards. And I talk to defensive players, hey, if you're a great player, you're getting in position to thud, and you don't have to dive around ankles, and you don't have to wrap up thighs. So we're challenging guys to get in those positions of great football players. And, it's not to the ground for health reasons, but it's pretty close.
What are some of the things left undone before your first game?
Yeah, undone. Probably still a couple end-of-game situations that we have to work on if you're talking schematically. But also, there are still guys fighting for the rotation and the reps, right? You might have an idea who that first group is, but how much does everybody trust the second group? How much does everybody trust the third group? How can we balance those reps for 2 things? 1, being fresh in the 4th quarter, but 2, being your best at the end of the year.
Coach Fick has talked a lot about the leadership of this team, as it's so much better this year than it was last year. Who are some of your leaders on defense?
Christian Allegro, Aaron Witt, Preston Zachman, Austin Brown are just some names that are doing a great job communicating. And what I'm noticing is how well we handle any moments of adversity. We challenge the guys rolling into camp. Hey, any moment of adversity, we're looking for signs of resiliency. So our bounce back has been much, much, much better. And if we give up a 12-yard play, no worries. We're coming back for a TFL or a takeaway on the next play, and I've loved the resiliency.
How much have your defensive guys talked about how different the offense is in camp?
Oh, my gosh, a ton. A ton. From when we first started seeing what the offense was doing before spring ball, it's forcing us to do 2 things. 1, be consistently physical, but 2, adjust. There are just a lot more personnel groups and moving parts. So you very, very seldom just to get to dig your feet in the dirt and go. And if we can play fast with all those adjustments, we're in good shape.
Appreciate your time, Coach. Have a great year.
All right, appreciate it, Coach.
Mentioned last year was the most points the Badgers have allowed in well over a decade. it is fair to point out they've been outstanding defensively here in recent years, so the bar is quite high. 23 points per game may be bad for them, but still stacked up reasonably well in the conference, 10 out of 18 teams. Let's dive into Mike Tressel's defense a little bit. And again, I think it bears repeating. This wasn't a bad defense a year ago. It was just not at the standard that you typically see from Wisconsin. And the biggest area that showed up, the most glaring deficiency, was against the run. And it's pretty clear they've worked to address that, Gerry.
And they've addressed it with personnel, and they've also addressed it with Coach Fickell's point that we change offense and there's more blocking schemes for the offensive line. It's not just zone right and zone left. There's gap schemes. And those type of things are going to help Mike Tressel's defense. Defense clearly ahead of the offense. Mike Tressel's back. The scheme hasn't changed, whereas on offense there's so much change.
Yeah, you know, when Tressel came in, that 2-4-5 system put a priority on speed. I think the big change today was just the size and the body types. I think the numbers we were told, Dave, last year they had 3 300-pound defensive linemen. This year it's up to 9. And Coach, to your point, your camp, spring ball, you're going against your team. So those inside run drills were extremely competitive. One area of emphasis for the defensive front is forcing more negative plays, TFLs and sacks. I thought it was a much a very competitive drill where the defensive line would throw a punch and the offensive line would throw back. But to your point, Coach, you're going against yourself. There should be good competition.
And the fact that it was balanced is different than a year ago, because a year ago, all the defense had to defend in those inside run drills was the zone scheme. Now they're defending different schemes, which is exactly what Coach Fickell wanted.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking. I mean, the stat that they were last in the nation in tackles for loss. I mean, there are a lot of teams in the country. You finish dead last. They have to be more disruptive, and I think we saw an emphasis on that. What about on the back end, Jake? What'd you see there?
Yeah, I think the safety room is probably one of the more underrated safety rooms in the conference. I think Zachman is a steady guy that you can move around. I think one key piece here is Forkerine, their cornerback. There's a big drop-off after him, and there's a little bit of uncertainty about whether or not or how much he'll get to play with the defense. But I think this is one of the more underrated secondaries if Forkerine can play. I'll throw in the linebackers too, Dave. Curtis and Allegro, those are both 4-5 guys according to their strength staff, so they're a big piece of the defense as well.
And just to be clear on Forkerine, that is an NCAA eligibility issue as to whether or not he's going to be able to play based on how the years that he has already played are being counted against him. There's a lot going on. There's 2 separate cases, so unclear how much Forkerine will be available. They could really use it.
Linebackers really are helped now because of the defensive line. Obviously, their job most of the time is to eat up blockers and keep the linebackers clean. And I agree, Jake. I thought the back end was really impressive today.
This is a team that gave up more than 40 points 3 times last year. Again, we saw them have some games where they just weren't what you would expect from Wisconsin's defense. We'll see whether or not they can get it back on track coming up this year. More Wisconsin talk just ahead. How Luke Fickell is approaching the very challenging slate that awaits his Badgers, plus what he's seen so far in camp. The Wisconsin coach joins me next. The Wisconsin Badgers getting set for their season opener against Miami of Ohio, a Thursday night game here on the Big Ten Network. First 2 games are at home before they head to Tuscaloosa. That game with the Crimson Tide, one of 6 against teams that are ranked in the preseason. Wisconsin faces 4 teams that won 10 games a season ago. October particularly brutal on paper, with Michigan, Iowa, Ohio State, and Oregon in succession. Pleased to be joined now by the head coach of the Badgers, Luke Fickell. Coach, let's start with that schedule. There's a lot of talk about it. It's challenging. I mean, there's no 2 ways about it. So how do you prepare for a schedule like that? What do you say to your guys in camp, and how do you deal with it?
Well, easy first question, obviously. But, no, I think that it was one of those things that we addressed as we started. It wasn't hard to, those guys understand that they don't miss anything. They see media day and half the things that were talked about. But the truth of the matter is once you start camp, you can't worry about those things. And so more than anything, I think the seniors and the older guys did a great job at just saying, guys, we don't need to talk about the schedule anymore. We understand it's going to be a challenge. We understand this is what we signed up for. Let's not worry about it. Let's really try to focus in on the basics and making sure we're moving forward with the objectives of what we have every single day. And when those games come, we'll handle them all.
So given that, how important is it for you guys to start off well against Miami of Ohio and Middle Tennessee before you head down to Tuscaloosa, just to play good football so you kind of have a good feeling about your team.
It is, and I think the thing that we got to make sure our guys understand and we understand is playing good football is what we define as playing good football. Obviously, that's winning games, but there's also a lot more to it. And so I think that more than anything over the last couple of years, even when we've won the first few games, regardless of what the score has been, I don't think our guys had gained confidence and felt like the plan was in place as we continue to move into especially the league schedule. So I think for us, more than anything, yes, it's easy to evaluate on Saturday on wins and losses, but I think it's really important for us to figure out, hey, this is who we are, this is the way we want to play, this is the complementary program that we want to be all about, and we need to see that from the very get-go.
One of the big talks in the offseason was guys talking about improvements in the culture, and they really felt like they were in a better spot maybe than they were a year ago. And I don't want to get you into comparing teams or anything, but like how does that manifest itself?
It does. I think that's what Platteville, hopefully being away for 14 days, gave us a better chance to focus on. But it still comes down to people. I mean, the truth of the matter is we can preach till we're blue in the face and we can put things on walls, but what it comes down to is the leadership. And I know that I'm the first one in the part of the leadership, but the things that have to happen from within your locker room is what's so key. And there's a reason why we probably won't announce captains, because the truth of the matter is we got about 14 guys, maybe even more in a leadership group, that I think it's going to be really, really important for us to figure out, hey, how do these guys really understand? How do they move forward with leadership? How do they share the burden of all those things on a daily basis? And at the end of the year, it'll be really easy to figure out who the true leaders or who kind of steps forward in the midst of all the adversity that we know we're going to have to handle.
There's a leadership component of the people, and there's also the, hey, we're going to do some things differently, whether it be players or coaches, and one of those areas is offensive coordinator. You brought in Jeff Grimes. Give me a sense of why you felt like he was the right guy.
Well, there it is right. The first thing about it, the right person, the right guy, the right leader, the right man. I thought that was really, really important. I think really the offensive-wise I love, and it fits for who we need to be and who we want to be. But I think it really came down to him as a person, him as a leader, and understanding, like, if we're going to do this thing, there's going to have to be some complementary aspects to all that we do. And I think that's just him. That's his life. That's how he's been. That's how he's grown up. That's how he's had success. And I think he understands that. I think he understands what the power of leadership and getting people to follow you and buy in, how important that is with, whoever the day and age is, right? They all say it's harder now to build some of those things in the newer age, or with 16 or 17, one-year guys or transfer guys. But the truth of the matter is it just comes down to consistency, and it comes down to the right type of people, making sure that the message on a daily basis is very consistent and they live their life that way.
You mentioned the complementary aspects a couple of times of what you're doing. What do you mean by that? Like, what are we saying? Is that the offense is married to the defense, or what?
Well, that's the cliche of every coach. It's pretty easy at the end of press conference to say that was complimentary football, that wasn't complimentary football. But the truth of the matter is I think it's a lot deeper. It has a lot to do with that buzzword of culture, that environment that you create. And to me, it's not just complimentary football. It's a complimentary program. And everything, every aspect of what we do, we have to understand that. And I think not to blame or not to point fingers, but truth of the matter is we in some ways I've preached some things in the last 2 years, and I don't know that's the way we've lived. And when you talk about complementary programs in football, it's not just offense, defense, and special teams. It has a lot to do with the culture and the environment and what people really truly believe. And I think that's where some of that culture, some of that growth of us as a team and as a program, I think has been able to happen over the last 8, 9, 10 months.
I want to talk about the quarterback spot. We didn't get to see a ton of Billy Edwards. I understand if you guys played today that he would be available, so not a huge issue there. But you have had quarterback injury issues the last 2 years. I'm sure you don't need me to remind you of this, Luke. So you got two guys who had started at the FBS level. Tell me about what you see in that room and how important that depth is.
Well, it's really important. I think it's always the most difficult position in the past 4 years of keeping some depth in there. But really, Billy's walked in the door, and everything is earned. But he's walked in the door, and we said, hey, here are the keys, and we want you to take it. Now, that didn't mean that Danny O'Neill wasn't coming in and saying, hey, I want to beat you out, and I want to take this opportunity. And that's what we want, and that's what Danny really brings. But the truth of the matter is, we said, hey, this is who you are. This is what we need from you. And I'll give you, Billy's done an unbelievable job. And obviously we got to perform, and I'm not going to put any more pressure on him than already is, and he understands that. But the truth of the matter is he's been a big part of, I think, some of the growth of what we've done in this complementary program, and how we kind of handle some of the leadership and how guys understand that, like, what we do together and everything. And so if anything, he's been an incredible example of that. He's been an incredible example of leadership and what a pro looks like, whether it's in that quarterback room or throughout the entire locker room.
With all the focus on the quarterback, and Billy can help this given his mobility, but you guys, when you have been winning in your 2 years here, you've run the football really well. I mean, you're undefeated when you go over 150 yards running the ball. So how do you get back to kind of that Wisconsin offense that just grinds people down?
We like to joke about it. I said that, there were 5 games that we won the rushing battle last year, and it's not hard to figure out which 5 those were. Yeah. It's not 1992 when I started college, but there are a lot of similarities to what college football still is today. And I know it's different, I know it's evolved, and I know there's a lot more things that are involved in that, but there still is a core aspect to the Big Ten and what you have to do to be successful. And so I think there's a balance there that we always talk about, but I think that the core of who we are, just for instance, I mean, you could watch us to start a practice, and the difference is we don't start with tempo anymore. We start with a half-line drill where we understand it's going to be about the guys up front, and we've always understood that, but I don't know that we've always lived that. And so I think there's a refocus to making sure that, it's not just, hey, this is Wisconsin of 1993 and 4 and things like that, but there is a lot of elements of what has been successful here and what it's going to take for us to get over this hump.
So running the ball and then on the other side stopping the run was not a huge strength last year. You've really remade that defensive line. I mean, guys who were here last year, who are here this year as well, I mean, look physically bigger, but then you also went out and added some size. How much of that was with a focus on we got to stop the run?
There was a big focus on that, and it was twofold. It's not just saying it, but it's also living it. It's also putting some guys in that room that you feel like have a better opportunity to do it. And the truth of the matter is it takes more than 3 or 4 guys. Yeah. And if last year we had 1 guy over 300 pounds, to be honest with you, I think we got 7 or 8 guys over 300 pounds, and we've created a lot more length. We've created some more size. We've also created an urgency to understand that, you've got to earn the right to rush the passer. And everybody wants to talk about rushing the passer and doing those kinds of things, but there still is some elements of no matter what the offense that you're playing is, that you have to control and own the line of scrimmage. And so twofold, I think the emphasis, but also bringing in guys to provide depth, provide some physicality, and then living the life on a daily basis, whether it's in the winter, how you train, how you do walkthroughs, just making sure everybody understands. That's a big part of the complementary program that we need to make sure we focus on.
One of the areas where you really excelled was in the portal this year. I mean, you brought in some really highly rated guys. We've already talked about the quarterbacks and the impact they might make, but who else, guys who weren't here a year ago, do you think has really popped in camp?
It's hard to sit there and say. There are a bunch. And the truth of the matter is we kind of talked about the front, and not to single any of them out, but there's a lot more size. There's some depth there that I think is going to be unique for us. Not to say that Ben Barton isn't, go from 310 pounds to 330 pounds, he's going to play nose guard, but Suggs is a 3 technique inside that just changes some elements for us. And we got a guy back in Brandon Lane who's 320 some pounds who came in last year, but was young and trying to learn the system. There's some edges that are going to give us a different look. And I think that the unique thing about it is to say one of them, I think is like, that's not going to be the strength of us. To say that there's 4 or 5 that actually can roll in there, I think that's where the strength comes. And then I think there is some offensive weapons, that just that will give us an opportunity to be different on the outside with some speed, but also at the tight end position. And I just think that all those things added together, I don't know that it's easy to say Billy, and there's easy to point at some other guys in particular, like, well, this guy was rated this. The truth of the matter is it's the sum of those parts that I think have really, so far for us, have bonded really well together, and you're kind of seeing it flourish.
Well, I've enjoyed watching this team here today. Thanks a lot for your time, Coach.
Thank you.
We've been talking about Jeff Grimes, brought in to get this offense going again. Up next, we will talk to Jeff Grimes. The Badgers' new OC stops by just ahead. Back in Madison, Wisconsin has failed to crack the top 90 in the nation in scoring the last 2 years. Enter new offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes, trying to reverse that trend. Twice a finalist for the Broyles Award, given to the nation's top assistant coach, once while at BYU and once while at Baylor under former Badger DC Dave Aranda. Was at Kansas last year, replacing Andy Kotelnicki, who went to Penn State. His offenses have averaged more than 400 yards per game at every stop. The Badgers averaged just over 350 a season ago. Here's Grimes with Gerry.
Coach, how's it feel to be the most well-known new resident in the state of Wisconsin?
You know how it is as a coach. You know, you don't really think about that until you go to the grocery store or go to church and people start talking to you like they know you, you know. Hey, you guys going to get that run game going this year, coach? And we're going to use a fullback. And all of a sudden people know a lot more about me than I thought.
We know what last 2 years' offense looks like. What will your offense look like?
Well, I think we'd like to start with saying that we want to be an NFL-style offense. I don't use the verbiage pro style anymore because I think that's kind of like saying you're a spread offense. It brings a certain mentality and it can mean different things. But I like to tell my players, recruits, and the fan base that the way you see people play on Sunday is a style of football that we'd like to emulate. You know, we'll huddle, we'll play in multiple personnel groups, we'll be in multiple formations, have shifts and motions. Quarterback will do a lot at the line of scrimmage, and you know, we'll start with trying to have a physical run game and a play action game that comes off of that.
Coach Fick is long ago, as a year ago, said that he wanted his offensive line, or the offensive line wanted to do more things. I think he was referring to only being a zone team. What are those other things that you've put in?
Well, I'm a big believer in the wide zone play. It's been the most effective play in the NFL for a number of years. If you look at NFL stats the last few years, it's, you know, highest number yards per carry, yards after contact, fewest TFLs, and so there's a consistency that comes with running the play well, and so we'll start with that. That'll be our lead play. But we'll do most everything else too. I mean, we'll run versions of inside zone and duo. We'll run your complement of gap schemes, and then have ways to get the ball on the perimeter as well.
Talk about what Billy Edwards brings physically first.
You know, he's got good size. That was one of the things that I like in a quarterback. You know, we've got kind of big linemen here, and so challenge, if you're not that, to see over them and be able to deliver the ball over the middle of the field. He's physical, and when I say that, his size and his ability to withstand hits, I think, is a real positive. And he's got really good arm talent as well.
How about all the other things other than physically? What does he bring?
Man, just an incredible work ethic, a preparedness that is probably better than any I've been around. I mean, he'll text me the night before and, hey, Coach, what about this play? Or it'll be a Friday and he may know that we have practice or a walkthrough, even back in the spring and summer, and we've got a couple of days off before our next walkthrough, and he's asking for the scripts already. Like, I hadn't even built them yet, you know, give me a minute here. But he really, really works at the game and has a tremendous mind, and the ability for him to control so many things and make things right and be a problem solver allows us to be pretty multiple.
How are you finding, we're in the world of the portal, someone like Billy coming in and being embraced by the rest of the team?
I think he's earned that. You know, I think he did a nice job in coming in and maybe not overstepping his bounds, trying to earn the trust of the team, but at the same time, you know, we tried to empower him and let him know that, you know, this is your job. We brought you here for this purpose. And I think as he's been here, the longer and longer he's built those relationships, the more powerful he is as a leader. And when he talks, everybody listens.
When you're in the grocery store and people are giving you suggestions, what do you say when they ask about the tailback position this year?
I say we've got a number of guys that I really like. It's an unusual position, you know. In most cases, you've got one guy who's sort of your bell cow, and then you've got one or two other guys that might be a little bit more of a rotational guy that serve a specific purpose. But, you know, we've got three guys that I think can do anything that we would ask them to do, and we've got a couple of others that can go in there if we need them too. So it's a pretty unique situation. They do all have a little bit of a different style, but I think they're all, in terms of size, speed, vision, toughness, I think they're all guys that we could do anything with. And, you know, as much as anything, I really respect their toughness.
Talk about the three and their styles, their each individual styles.
I'll start with Dylan, a really physical, downhill, straight line runner, Not that he doesn't have the ability to make people miss, but I think he'd probably rather run them over. I value that until he takes a few too many shots to the shoulder. But just incredibly tough and willing to be decisive with the ball in his hands. Cade Giacomelli is a guy that's really sort of a Swiss Army tool. You know, he's a good pass blocker. He catches it well out of the backfield. Has good vision and has really emerged as one of the leaders on the team. And Darion Dupree, I don't know, maybe a mixture of those two with a little bit more wiggle.
Well, have fun answering the questions in the grocery store about the offense, and have a great year. And appreciate your time.
Hey, you got it. Looking forward to it. Thanks.
Thanks.
For whatever reason, Phil Longo's offense never got on track in Madison, down nearly 9 points per game over the prior 18 seasons. The most obvious decline on the ground, a program defined by the run game for the past 3 decades, saw its average rushing yards plummet by more than 60 per game. Turnovers, an issue as well. So as we dive into this Badgers offense, I feel like a good place to start is that run game. You know Luke Fickell wants to emphasize it. You know the fan base wants to emphasize it as well. What did you glean from watching practice?
Well, it ended up about where I thought, right? It wasn't the old I formation. It certainly wasn't the air raid offense. And as Coach Grimes calls it, it's an NFL offense. And it fits their personnel perfect. I think Coach Grimes is going to be really, really good for this group. And I was impressed.
Yeah, the scheme and the identity stood out. And, you know, in football, no one thing is isolated. Nothing acts alone. And I think it's saying that the hiring of Jeff Grimes is going to have ripple effects across this entire team. You know, you talked to Coach Fickell, and he said he felt this offense struggled with confidence. Confidence comes from knowing who you are. With Jeff Grimes, they're going to have an identity. He has an offensive line background. This Badgers offensive line has been vocal about how pleased they are with the scheme. All of a sudden, you're going to be able to run the ball. That's going to have ripple effects. You look at Mordecai and Van Dyke, you bring in 2 quarterbacks. Both were injured since getting here. Running the ball is going to keep Billy Edwards clean. It also, you talk about the schedule. Well, if you can run the ball, suddenly you dictate the terms of the game. You keep your defense fresh. Another key point is explosive plays. Now you can get into play action. So I think the hiring of Jeff Grimes is going to have ripple effects that don't just turn around the offense, but the whole team.
And again, 11-0 under Luke Fickell when they run for 150 yards, 1-13 when they do not. So you understand why they want to emphasize that run. And they got big play guys. I mean, Vinny Anthony was second in the Big Ten. Right. In receptions at 30 yards or longer last year. So they can take the top off of defense if they have the opportunity to do that. The man who would be orchestrating that is Billy Edwards. Interesting in-conference transfer for him. Danny O'Neal comes in with some experience starting at San Diego State as well. How did you read the quarterback room?
Well, Billy was a little bit limited, but,
yes.
but he did enough, and we've obviously has seen him. I think he's a perfect guy for this offense. I relate him like a Will Howard at Ohio State a year ago, an older guy that just plugs in, can do everything that Coach Grimes wants him to do physically.
Yeah, and the veteran aspect and the experience benefits him because this is more of an NFL system. There is more verbiage. There is pre-snap motions and shifts, and I think it's interesting how Coach Grimes has really complimented his preparation and his IQ. Okay, he's injured. He's not getting the reps right now, but it's still, I get the sense that there's a mastery of this offense. Even when he wasn't in the team drills today, he's still coaching up the receivers on what he wants to see.
And non-conference schedule early, I think, really is going to help both sides of the ball, but especially the offensive side.
I certainly want to emphasize on Edwards. We were told that had they been playing a game today, Billy Edwards would have been able to play. Just precautionary, banged knees in practice the other day, and they just wanted to make sure they didn't put him in harm's way. But he's fine. He's good to go, which kind of to your point, Jake. I mean, they've had quarterback injuries here these last 2 years, so you can't be too cautious in a situation like that. The other piece of this puzzle, offensive line, they've had some injuries both in the preseason, in the spring, and also a little bit banged up here in the preseason. But overall, I know they feel good about this line. What did you see?
They're deep enough and they're good enough, and now they've got more to do. So the defensive line can't just fire out at them every time, knowing that most likely it was going to be a zone scheme a year ago. So it looks more like the offensive lines that when they were in the old I formation. that's what they look like, and they're closer to looking like that now than they have been the last 2 years.
Physically, it's a Wisconsin
Yes.
Badgers offensive line, but the scheme does make a huge difference. You know, the air raid system, you're focusing on tempo, you're standing up, you're getting and running a bunch of plays in a short amount of time. Now you're huddling, they're doing some tackle over stuff. So they want to get vertical double teams and try to have a dynamic and unique running scheme.
Coach Fickell said to you in his interview that we used to start with tempo, and now we're starting with half line, which is a very aggressive drill.
And they were getting a ton done, too, because they were doing 2 half-line drills.
Sure.
Next one, there was like a second in between the snaps. They got a ton of reps here today, trying to get this offense back on track. You look at the last 5 years, haven't ranked any higher than 7th in the Big Ten in scoring offense. Can they get back to being a higher-scoring Wisconsin team? Back to the defense next. A couple of the stars of that unit, Ricardo, Hallman, and Preston Zachman, set to visit with Jake as our Wisconsin practice special rolls on from Madison. Already discussed some of the defensive issues Wisconsin had a year ago. Run D wasn't great, last in the FBS in tackles for loss. They were pretty stingy on the back end, though. Top half nationally in pass efficiency defense, and 5th in the Big Ten in terms of fewest passing yards allowed per game. The 4 ahead of them, all bowl teams, including 2 that made the CFP. 2 of the stars of that secondary, Ricardo Hallman and Preston Zachman, with Jake.
I want to start with the fun question, Ricardo. There's a debate about the hardest thing to do in football. Playing defensive back always comes up there. Would you agree, or what would your opinion be on the hardest thing to do?
Oh, 100% is DB. And it's nothing about mirroring a receiver backwards. Like, we're have to open up and run and backpedal at a guy coming at us 20 miles per hour and have to stay on top of him and match his route and beat him to where he's going without even knowing. So I would definitely say defensive back is the hardest position.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree, especially some of these guys running 22, 23 miles an hour now and having no idea where they're running, and you got to be hip to hip with them the entire down. Play could be 10, 12 seconds sometimes if there's scramble drill and all that stuff. So, yeah, it's definitely
Even as an offensive guy, I'd agree with you guys, but just wanted confirmation. All right, you're about halfway through camp at this point, Preston. What would be your evaluation of the defense at this point?
I think you can definitely tell that we're more physical. We're bigger up front. You can just see the physicality in the run game, and we're very experienced in the back end and the comfortability and communication and stuff like that. You continue to see that to grow.
Are you aware of the body types up front and the changes made up front, and how does that affect what you guys do in the secondary?
Oh, it makes it a lot easier on us. And, you know, we always say in the secondary, a great pass rush is a defensive back best friend. So those guys up there wreaking havoc is a lot easier on us, unless it's the low for sure.
Yeah, Coach Tressel has mentioned a desire to wreak more havoc, also force more turnovers. So what does that look like in practice? How have you guys emphasized that during fall camp?
Yeah, I mean, every opportunity you have to go attack the football is really being emphasized, whether pass game, trying to get interceptions, tips and overthrows, stuff like that, but then also run game, especially DBs in the back end at the end of plays, punching the ball out. There's been an emphasis on that, trying to get the ball out.
You're part of actually one of the better safeties in a really deep, talented safety position in the Big Ten. Are you aware of the competition, and are you motivated by trying to be the best in the conference?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, I don't pay too much attention to some of the other schools and some of the other players on their teams, but yeah, I mean, I definitely want to pride myself on trying to be the best player I can for this team to help this team win.
Ricardo, bring in Billy Edwards, Jeff Grimes installing a new offensive system. What has stood out to you about the offense?
It's chaotic, but I mean that in a good way. And, we like to say on the defense, if you don't have your eyes right, there's an explosive going right over your head. And I think they've done a great job of really mixing it up and adding a little bit of that old Wisconsin with some nuances in the pass game and just a lot of eye trickery things. And it definitely keeps the defense on their toes and having them be prepared fully.
Awesome. Well, it's going to be fun to watch you guys this fall. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
The dramatic conclusion of our show next. Final thoughts on what we saw today in Madison. Jake and Gerry share the biggest things that stood out to them. Stick around. Wrapping things up from Madison as the Badgers get set for 2025. Guys, final thoughts on what we saw here today.
First thing that jumped out at me was the energy from the very start of practice. They went right into a half-line drill, which Coach Fick mentioned to you about. That's one of the ways they've changed the attitude about the offense around here. Offensively, I think they've come to a place where it's not the spread, it's not the old I formation, it's just right for Wisconsin.
Yeah, the energy and competition definitely jumped out during some of these inside run periods. I mean, literally there's a fighting going on figuratively and literally. Offensive line, defensive line, pushing and shoving after the whistle. And I just think about the feel of this team. You know, when Tressel and Longo first got here, you talk about a 2-4-5 defense and an air raid offense. You think of speed and a little bit of finesse. Now when we talk to the players and the staff, the first word that they say is they want to play a physical brand of football. I think that's going to benefit the Badgers.
You know, I would never limit a team to how many games you think they would win, but you look at what Coach Fick has done. You know, he took over the program, I formation, as we all know, West Division, as we all know. There's a lot of things that had to change when he came in here. The recruiting process and the recruiting office had to be rebuilt. So how many games they win this year, I don't know, but to be one of the better programs after 3 years with what he inherited is, I think, too much to ask.
It's a challenging schedule, no doubt about it, right? I mean, if you could put a dash Birmingham after the week 3 opponent, that might make you feel a little bit better. And obviously they got a really tough draw with the Big Ten opponents as well. I mean, you could envision a scenario where they're a significantly better team and the record isn't all that much better than it was a year ago. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a lot of reasons for optimism based on philosophical changes that they've made here and based on the way that they've changed the roster and some of the body types.
Correct. And there are teams on that schedule that they'll be as good as, if not better, personnel-wise. And I think that's probably the place where you want to see the most progress. Look at the matchup opponents. Look at how much better you're running the ball, how much more physical you are. And if that shines through a matchup opponent, then that's a good third year.
I completely agree with you, Dave. The schedule's the schedule. We understand. But at the end of the day, football's a great sport because it's a battle between you and the potential best version of yourself. And I think they've implemented changes here from a coaching staff standpoint and what they're prioritizing on each side of the ball that's going to allow them to play closer to their potential.
For sure. Really encouraging, no doubt, based on what we saw here today. We are headed to Champaign next. Speaking of encouraged, Illini fans fired up about what Brett Bielema did last year, winning 10 games. The Illini trying to break through, get themselves into the college football playoff. We will do a deep dive on the orange and blue up next on our camp tour. Thanks to everyone here in Madison, Patrick Herb, Nate Jelinek, always a great stop. We will see you next time from Champaign. Thanks so much for watching our camp tour here on the Big Ten Network.